On this episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, we've got a 2 for the price of 1 sale going on because we're covering both Our Destiny and Roadhouse Garden from the Purple Rain Deluxe edition released from 2017. And joining me on this episode is Leslie Ballard. Welcome back to the show, Leslie.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be back again.
I appreciate you being on the show again. It's been a little bit. This is, Purple Rain Super Deluxe. Well, actually, it wasn't really super. It was just a regular deluxe edition from 17. Hopefully someday we'll get something a little more meaty. But, I think the disc of tracks that we did get from that 2017 release, the vault tracks, are pretty solid. I mean, there's a lot of really, really excellent songs on there, this being one of them. This was a song that you chose to do, I should say song. These are songs that they combined into a medley that you chose to do. Do you have any personal connection to these songs, or do you just like them, or is there something special about them to you?
Yeah, I had heard the live versions, bootleg sort of for a while and always liked them. And so then when one version of the studio version came out on the Purple Rain Deluxe, I was so thrilled about that. And another thing about me is I have this habit of buying domains that I never do anything with. And I actually own roadhousegarden.com. So,
nice.
And maybe I'll blog there. I don't know. I've also got like Shaboogie Bop and, anyway, some other stuff. But I've always loved these tunes. And I love them separately, as well as, in the configuration when they're together. So I thought it would be fun to talk about them.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into kind of like the background of these tracks. So I'm using the term song kind of loosely because it is like a medley, but what we ended up getting officially released is a combination of 2 discrete tracks that were written by Prince and performed by Prince and the Revolution, both live at his June 7th, 1984 birthday show. And also there were studio versions of each of these songs. So I think the theory is that when this Purple Rain Deluxe edition was being configured and tracked, and there was a decision to be made on what to include, instead of including separate versions of each of these songs as separate tracks, what seems to make the most logical sense is that they made executive decision to combine them in a medley, just like they were performed at that June 7th show. So it was kind of like mimicking how they were presented to the audience at First Avenue at that time. Do you have a different theory behind that, Leslie, or do you think that there's some truth to that potentially?
Yeah, I don't have a different theory. It's that's what I assume that they did. And it makes sense. One day I would love to have the other studio version that isn't released, but I think it's, especially of Our Destiny. I think you're spot on, or at least no one's ever told me differently.
Yeah, exactly. So the deluxe edition that we've got in 2017 was fine. It was a placeholder. It was like the first, significant posthumous release that we got from the estate. So I can't knock it. We don't have a vinyl version of it. That would be my biggest gripe, I guess, if I was going to have any gripes. But the consensus, I think, amongst the Prince community, whatever you want to call us, is that we would love something a bit more along the lines of your 1999 or Sign of the Times Super Deluxe editions. And if we ever got those, I'm hoping that, to your point, we would get like the separate versions of Our Destiny and separate version of Roadhouse Garden, whether those are Prince's version of Our Destiny, a full version with Lisa's vocals, a full version with Jill Jones's vocals, right. Roadhouse Garden as it was, kind of recorded originally back in spring of '84 before it was performed at First Ave. That's the kind of stuff that we're looking for, right? I mean,
Yep,
This was cool
absolutely.
because this gave us a nice cleaned up medley of these two songs, but we know that there's got to be more out there. We're just hoping that they're in good enough shape and good enough quality that they can ultimately be shared with us at some point.
Right. Along with, I mean, not to rabbit trail, but a really good live recording of Electric Intercourse, that version.
Yeah,
all that
yeah.
belongs on there, absolutely.
I think we all want that live, like a high quality version of that
Yes.
live performance of Electric Intercourse from August '83. That's what we all kind of strive to have
Yep.
something along those lines. Again, Electric Intercourse studio version that we got on the deluxe edition, great, love it. Want that live version though.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of interesting that June 7th, '84. I think people would also like to have that full concert audio of that concert available. That would be great as well. But it's interesting, to think of the people who were attending that show. So When Doves Cry had just recently been released as the first single from the forthcoming Purple Rain soundtrack. So the album had not been released yet by June 7th. Of course, the movie hadn't been released yet. And here Prince is playing songs like this Our Destiny Roadhouse Garden, All Day, All Night, songs that these people in attendance of this show would never hear again unless they were into bootlegs.
Right.
And maybe the bootleg they got was just the bootleg of this show that they were in attendance at. So it's kind of interesting. Like maybe they were expecting these songs to be on the soundtrack when they bought it a month or two later, and like where's that song I heard at First Avenue? Where's that the other song I heard at First Avenue? He was just kind of putting them out there, and then never played them live again, which is always fascinating to me when artists do that. They'll perform a new song once and never again.
Or wait a really, really long time in some cases.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Let's see. What else did I want to say about that? Oh yeah, the All Day All Night. Just for those who are wondering, yeah, that's the version. That's the song that ended up getting released on Jill Jones's self-titled Paisley Park release. But these two songs were never released in any other version by any other artist. And according to Prince Vault, so for Our Destiny, according to Prince Vault, Wendy and Lisa worked on this track further in September of '84. So it's possible that the version that we hear on the 2017 Purple Rain Deluxe might have some of the live performance with overdubs, or it can be completely 100% studio. I'm not entirely sure. My ears are not discerning enough to be able to tell, and I haven't honestly spent the time listening to them back to back to decide if there was anything pulled out of that June 7th performance and used as the basis for this studio version. So I'm not sure. I don't know if you've ever dug down that deep, Leslie.
No, I haven't analyzed them in that depth. I just, I know that I've always appreciated that at the beginning of the live version, let's call it, the Bill Evans intro there. I always thought was really cool. From what was that album? Shoot, it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. But anyway, the intro of Our Destiny on the live one was from Bill Evans, and that is not on the, let's say, studio version that we get. So there's something different, definitely, but there could be, like you said, elements that were the same. I haven't analyzed it that in depth musically.
Yeah, and good point about the intro, because then what Wendy and Lisa had worked on further was the addition of strings, which Prince must have liked enough to then take those out of this Our Destiny studio recording and repurpose them for the latter, which would be recorded like a month later in the fall of '84 to be part of the Around the World in a Day album. So there was definitely some value placed on the work that Wendy and Lisa had done. And I say had done because obviously they didn't play the strings, but they either orchestrated them or they hired the people to do them, because according to Princeveld, he really didn't have a lot of, if any, input to what they were working on with this song later after the June performance. I think he was just a bit too busy promoting
Right.
the movie and promoting the album, and then also creating more music as he tends to do constantly. So yeah, I like the fact that you can hear those strings from the ladder in this studio version of Our Destiny. That's a nice little Easter egg for those of us who can find it and pick it out. With the Roadhouse Garden portion of this song, I guess Jill Jones had said at some point that this was based, or this was going to be part of a musical Prince was working on called Roadhouse Garden. And then, of course, we also know that Prince and the Revolution, or at least Prince and Wendy and Lisa, were planning on releasing an album called Roadhouse Garden in the late 90s, which was going to include songs from the 80s that were being either re-recorded or just released on this album as is from the 80s, including Roadhouse Garden, of course, the title, which would have been the title track. But that release never happened. So we have a lot of opportunities for Roadhouse Garden to also see the light of day if any of these ideas had come to fruition, whether it was the musical or the late 90s Prince and the Revolution release. But, never happened in Prince's lifetime.
It would be fun to have like a speculative track listing of the 98, what was to be, or wasn't to be, I guess more accurately said, the Roadhouse Garden LP, with Wendy and Lisa's input, similar to what, people have done with like the original Crystal Ball and stuff like that. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't really have that level of knowledge of what was going to be on that, unlike the original Crystal Ball, when we've seen tapes that were earmarked or called Crystal Ball that were like studio tapes that were going to be used for the configuration. I think just because that had gone so far into the process of becoming an actual album, so there had been a lot of eyes on it prior to it being shelved, but ultimately repurposed for Sign of the Times. So that's largely the reason why you can explain why Crystal Ball could be reconfigured and as the original intent, but Roadhouse Garden has nobody's been able to do that yet.
Right.
Also, as far as like Our Destiny half of this track, it's kind of notable because it is Lisa Coleman on lead vocals, which prior to 1984, we really didn't have any examples of anybody other than Prince performing on a track that was either intended for or performed by Prince or Prince and the Revolution. Like, if you don't count like those Rebels songs from the late 70s, which were never going to be a part of a Prince project, that was, as far as I know, that was never really the intent of those studio sessions. But we have to believe, like, this song Prince had in mind for something that he was working on that was going to see the light of day. Like, it was performed live. He had members of his band spend significant time on working on it. So it wasn't just a quick, hey, let's jam in the studio. Hey, Lisa, you sing on this song. And then just kind of like a studio exercise like those Rebels tracks were. So I find that interesting. I mean, it wouldn't be the last time we would hear lead vocals from somebody other than Prince on a Prince and the Revolution or Prince track, Prince and the New Power Generation. But this was like the first example of that.
It's the first one I can think of as well. Right, and then he really leaned into it with like Parade and other projects like that. But that's
sure.
Probably one of the reasons that I like Our Destiny so much. Like, it's just different. The entire vibe was different from. I mean, I think it could have fit on Around the World in a Day, but he chose not to. But it's just different. I love it.
Yeah, and when you think about from a musical standpoint, I guess that's not really what we do on the show. But when you think of it musically, it makes sense that it could have been an Around the World in a Day track, or even like a B-side, for example, because it's got strings. used strings quite a bit, starting at that era when he hadn't really before. It's got the finger cymbals in Roadhouse Garden. Finger cymbals are all over Around the World in a Day.
Mm-hmm.
It just has, I mean, makes sense because he was writing these songs at the same time he was writing songs for Around the World in a Day and recording songs for Around the World in a Day. So unless he was able to compartmentalize, like, this is the sound I'm going for Around the World in a Day, and this is the sound I'm going for Roadhouse Garden, and the two have to be completely different in terms of the sound and style. Not that he couldn't do that. Of course, he had the skill and the talent to do that, but I just don't think, like, when you're writing songs and recording songs in a time frame, like, 2, 3, 5 month time frame, I just can't imagine that ideas don't bleed into each other from project to project, song to song, and what you think sounds cool and sounds of the moment for you is going to find its way into each of those songs as well. So that's just kind of my thought on it.
Yep, I agree with you. It definitely has genetic commonalities with other things of the era, let's say.
Yes, exactly. I like that. I do think that the solo version of Our Destiny, only because when we like hearing songs that were sung by somebody other than Prince, I think the natural inclination for those of us are like, that's cool. I love hearing Rosie's vocals or Wendy's vocals or Lisa's vocals or whomever, Tamara's vocals, but I want to hear the Prince vocal version of that too. We value all these other singers and we think they do a great job, but we know who wrote them, and so our gut is that there's a version with Prince's vocals on it as well. Time has proven us usually correct with projects like Originals and some of these super deluxes where you hear the Prince vocal version of a song like Makeup. So we like hearing Prince's vocals too. So I hope that we hear Our Destiny with Prince's vocals at some point.
Right. I mean, we can hear him on the live version, but we need, like you said, we need the studio Prince on this track. I agree.
Yep, we're on the same page there. So in terms of Our Destiny, since these are two different separate tracks that were combined for the live and studio versions that we got in 2017, they don't have, I mean, when I look at the lyrics and I read through the lyrics of both of these songs, the commonalities are, I wouldn't say very strong. They seem to be two very different songs with two very different messages or themes. Maybe we'll uncover some common threads between the two songs, but I don't know. Like, Our Destiny's telling one story and Roadhouse Garden seems to be telling a completely different story to my eyes and my ears, but I don't know. I guess that's the purpose of going through them, is maybe we'll uncover something that connects the two songs besides just the fact that they were performed together on stage in June of '84. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they're separate?
I think they're separate. I think that they both make me feel really good. Like, they feel like positive. Like, one of them's more, ethereal and I don't know how else to put it, and the other is just happy, right? But they both have a very positive vibe, at least for me. But yeah, thematically, lyrically, I don't really think they have a lot in common.
Yeah, I struggled to find anything myself. I didn't spend a lot of time looking for it because I was really just kind of wanting to let the conversation take us there if there was something that we uncovered. But I was struggling. I was struggling because Our Destiny seems to be, on the surface, a song that speaks to, the mixture of love and destiny, and how, or the idea that true love is something that people have very little power to control or have very little control over. It's like speaking about fated love and love that, you just kind of happen upon, not something that you find necessarily by searching for it. It just happens to you. in some ways. So let's go through the vocal or through the lyrics of Our Destiny and see what we see. So the first verse, the moment you came to town, my life changed all around. 20 quarters to your name, 5 George Washingtons, no one to blame. And then we get into the chorus. So with this first verse, Leslie, what are you getting from this in terms of the theme and what Prince is trying to say here?
Basically, just you showed up and the color of everything changed. The mood, the lighting, like my entire world changed. Began to sing, began to sound different, look different, etc. I've always been super fascinated with the poetic wordplay there of 20 quarters to your name, 5 George Washingtons. I just, it's not like it's super deep or anything, but I've always thought that was a cute play there.
I'm trying to figure out with those two lines, how much money does this person have? Because 20 quarters is $5. 5 George Washingtons is $5. So as he's saying,
is it 5 or 10?
Exactly. Do they have $10? 5 of them in quarters and 5 of them in $1 bills, or do they just have $5 and they're just saying like you have the equivalent of 20 quarters or 5 George Washingtons, and that's all you have? So
yeah, that's a good question.
I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I've always like in my head canon, as some might say, it's always just been $5. But that's a good point. I haven't thought of that.
I wouldn't want to carry around 20 quarters, I guess.
No,
I mean, if
unless you were going to the laundry.
Yeah, right. If I had or the arcade when I was a kid,
right.
I would love to have 20 quarters, but right. But if I'm carrying around 20 quarters in my pocket, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to a bank and asking if I could change this for a 5 or 5 ones.
Right.
That's just me, though. I don't like carrying around change. But yeah, so I agree with you. It's just kind of, again, setting the theme as somebody who has found somebody, kind of like happenstance. Like the moment you came to town, my life changed all around. So just this person entered this other person's life, and despite the fact that they seem to not have a lot of money, it doesn't really matter. There's a clear attraction and connection that's being spoken about here in this first verse. And money doesn't matter tonight. I mean that.
Right.
And I ain't got no money, so like start of I want to be your lover. So Prince does like to make sure that money is not important when speaking of matters of the heart. Definitely a theme.
Definitely. One other quick thing. It's always been interesting to me, the line, no one to blame. Like, I could see it saying, you imagine someone coming to town and they've got $5 or $10 in their pocket and they have no one to rely on, right? Like they're alone, they're fending for themselves. But the line, no one to blame, is interesting. Like, I've always kind of thought of it as like, well, if I fail, I've got no one to blame but myself, right? Like whoever that person is that's being sung about here.
Yeah, it is an interesting line, because blame for what? Blame for falling in love? Blame for, like, if it doesn't work out? Like, if it doesn't work out, like, I can't blame anybody but myself, because I knew this person didn't have any money, and ultimately, like, they just kind of swept me off my feet, and maybe I'm being rash and not thinking this through. I have nobody to blame. This is my choice. My life changed all around. And I know exactly who this person is, at least financially. And so I can't blame anybody if that becomes a problem in the relationship later on. Or maybe it has nothing to do with the money at all and has something to do with another topic. But yeah, Exactly. It's an interesting choice of words to end the verse on. So then the chorus goes, I look, it's written in the sky above, our destiny is to fall in love. Don't fight it because it's stronger than us. Our destiny is to fall in love. Love. And again, I think I already kind of cited what I think the chorus is really reiterating, that it's the theme of the song is, that there's fate, and this love that she's speaking about in the song is of that type. Like, it's just meant to be. It's written in the sky above, and our destiny is to fall in love. Like, she has a very open heart when it comes to this person. Like, not too guarded. Like, she's willing to just let it happen and let whatever be may be. I don't know. Do you have any comments on what you think the chorus is trying to say?
Yes, it's that. I think it's even stronger than that on the leaning into love side of things. Like, because she's not just saying, "Oh, whatever happens, happens. Maybe we'll fall in love." She's like, "No, look, the sky says we're going to fall in love, so we got to do this." Right? Like, who are we to fight fate? Right? We should just, lean into it. Very
Yeah, don't fight it.
grandiose, and exactly, because it's going to happen. You might as well enjoy it. It's basically what I hear her saying there.
Yeah, exactly. It's our destiny, which, of course, the name of the title of the song is Our Destiny. So the title of the song tells you exactly what the type of love Lisa's singing about, and that's a destined love that they, like you said, they have no recourse against, because it's fated. All the signs are pointing to this being something that will happen, and they just need to go along with it. Kind of let it take them over, and don't fight what's happening to them.
And it's interesting too, is that, I mean, it gets into it later in the song in more depth, but the destiny is not to be together forever. That's not what she says, right? It's to fall in love. It's that act or experience to share that together, and purely focusing on that. And I think that's interesting too.
Mm-hmm. And there's definitely lines later in the song that reiterate that, and definitely add credence to that comment you just made, that it's not to necessarily be together forever. It's not necessarily even to be, a long-lasting, never-ending love for the ages. This is happening right now. This is for right now. Let's let it take its course and see where it goes, but we're not going to fight it right now, at least.
Right. Exactly.
The moment I saw you walk, I had to talk to you. I didn't know what to say. I wanted your love anyway. Again, kind of speaking to the love at first sight, I think, theme that Prince did like to explore in his writing, especially songs that were around romantic love and sexual attraction and lust. Raspberry Beret, Little Red Corvette, You Got the Look. A lot of his biggest hits from the 80s were of this type of writing, where Prince sees somebody and is just immediately enamored with them, has to get to know them better, has to sleep with them. These are all themes in these songs. Raspberry Beret, Little Red Corvette, You Got the Look, You Walked In, I Woke Up. Raspberry Beret, she walked in through the outdoor,
Mm-hmm.
First time I saw her, I had the nerve to ask her. She had the nerve to ask me if I planned to do her any harm. These are like first time meeting type songs.
Right.
I guess I should have known by the way you parked your car sideways. It's just the same things. Like, Prince likes to talk and speak to songs or write about songs where these first time meetings they just blow him away. The moment I saw you walk, I had to talk to you. I didn't know what to say. Like, the second, he's really into the idea of love at first sight, I think, at least from a songwriting perspective. Whether or not he really believed it, I have no idea. But anything with the second verse?
No, I agree with you, and I think one could argue that he probably did in real life too. If you look at some situations over his life, but we're not here to analyze that necessarily.
Yeah, but you're probably right. I mean, how do you write so many songs about love at first sight or lust at first sight without believing that there's something to it, like the excitement of meeting somebody new and feeling, that rush.
Like instant connection. He definitely believed in that, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
But the second verse I think is, I don't know, it kind of feels trite to call it cute, but it sounds cute to me. Like, it just makes me smile every time I hear it. Like, just imagining, seeing a person walk and like, oh, I've got to talk. I don't have no idea what I'm going to say, but I'm compelled by destiny to talk to this person,
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of how I hear it.
Yeah, I wanted your love anyway. Didn't know what to say. I wanted your love anyway. So, if you don't shoot your shot in this case, you will never know, and this person feels like it's written in the clouds. It's fated again, as we've already talked about. So you got to go for it. And because it's fated, it will all work out in the end.
Right. I also, sort of roughly from this broader era, this verse makes me think of Wonderful Ass also. Not only because of the, Lisa's participation in the vocal, but, I knew when I saw you walk, just that whole theme there too.
Yeah. Yeah. The walking that must have been sexual, very sexy walk or something that turned him, or in this case Lisa, on to see this person walking. Right. So like somebody's walk isn't often cited as being an attractive trait, I guess. Maybe, I don't know, it depends on the gender, depends on, I think that's a lot of things. I don't look at people's walk and think to myself, wow, that's a really sexy walk. I just don't. But other people may be more attuned to that aspect of a person's style or a person's presence, where the way somebody walks does make a difference to them, and it's something that they do notice. So I think it's person specific. So the part that towards each of these little sections, Our Destiny and Roadhouse Garden together, they combine it to be, I don't know, like a 5-minute song or so. Individually, they're very short, of course.
Right.
So we don't have a lot more lyrics, but Lisa's got this spoken word section, and it's like the bridge, I guess. Look, I'm not saying let's get married or nothing. I'm not ready to settle down, and I don't want to have your baby. But you got to be the finest specimen I've ever seen. That's my favorite part of the song personally, just because I love how she delivers it, coming from Lisa. I don't know. Again, it just sounds like something Prince would say, and then coming out of Lisa's mouth, it just makes me laugh a little bit. It's cute, like you said, even though it sounds trite.
I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think there's a reference to this in Dwayne Tudall's Prince and the Purple Rain era studio sessions, 83 and 84. I seem to remember Lisa kind of talking about how cringy that was for her to say. Yeah. And it cracks me up. I've met her a couple times, but if I ever get to again, I'd love to talk about that. Like you said, this entire song is cute to me. But especially with her delivery, and especially the very, but you got to be the finest specimen I've ever seen. Like, I just laugh every time.
Yeah. Prince liked having Lisa say things that I don't think she would normally say in her day-to-day, like the head, for example, like having her recite all those lines in head, and then having her say just the line, you got to be the finest specimen I've ever seen. That's just, I don't know Lisa Coleman personally, obviously, but I've seen enough interviews with her. She's very soft-spoken in interviews, and kind of demure. Not that she's in private that way, but when she comes across as more like I said, when Wendy is usually the more louder, boisterous one of the two, Lisa tends to take a back seat when they're having interviews with the two of them. So just for her to say something so bold, and so brazen is cute and fun, and I like it.
Agree. Absolutely agree.
But what this does say is, to your point earlier, this is not. So it's weird for me because the idea of a fated love, of something that is destined to happen, sometimes you automatically assume that means that it's going to be an everlasting love, or a love for the ages, meaning they will be together forever. This is not what this song is saying, and if you weren't sure, this part clarifies that for you. I'm not even saying let's get married. Like, we can just have our thing right now, even though it says our destinies to fall in love. But falling in love does not necessarily have to mean be in love forever, get married, make some sort of grand commitment to each other, raise a family. I just want to be with you in the moment, and our destinies to fall in love. It sounds like it's very romantic, but it could also just be a stand-in for a sexual relationship too. Prince often used the word love when really he just wanted to put a different word in there, like have sex, fuck, whatever.
Yep.
But he's trying to make it a little more palatable to wider audiences. So it's a song about love. Well, no, sometimes those songs about love are songs about fucking.
Yep.
And that's really all they are. And I'm not saying that this song is that, but you got to wonder, like, if he's talking about how their destinies to fall in love, and I just got to talk to you. I got to, see what you're about. Don't fight it. We need to be together. Yeah, but how long? For the night? For the weekend? Don't plan on getting married, or if they are, let's not rush it. And maybe that's really the message there. Let's let that happen naturally, if it happens at all.
This entire theme, not only, sort of going back a few lines about walking, right? Watching someone's walk, but also that sort of in the moment, I want you right now sort of a thing. Also, it just occurred to me, it reminds me of Feel You Up.
Yeah.
Where there's that line that says, something about the way you walk just really blows my mind. Sorry, but I'm sick of all this jive. And then he says, later on, I ain't looking for a one night stand. I only want to fill you up. I don't really want to be your man. I only want to fill you up. Very, very similar, sort of theme, I think.
Yeah. I will say what I need to say to get you to notice me and get you to spend time with me, but let's not pretend that there's anything greater than that at this moment. It could develop, but I just met you, so let's not talk about getting married and settling down and having babies together. That's going a bit overboard.
But it's written in the sky, so
yeah. So we're gonna do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But I don't want to scare you away either by declaring this fated and written in the sky above love is going to result in some sort of long-term commitment. It's that he's trying to put it in perspective, I guess. Like, I just met you, so let's put this all in perspective. We're not ready to settle down.
It kind of reminds me also of She's Always in My Hair. That sort of, I don't know, not to go too much into that one, but the vibe there, just very similar thematically, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of songs I think that you could point to and have similar thematic elements to Our Destiny, I would say. Okay, so then at the end of the song, there's a little more of new lyrics here. I'll say we cannot kiss, not just yet. Rita Hayworth would never treat you like this. Our passion's in bloom, let's find a room. Do you want me? I want you. And I think it's basically kind of saying the same thing, like, except what's interesting is the line, I'll say we cannot kiss, not just yet. like that doesn't really match, I guess, unless what's been said up to this point, except for the fact that let's slow it down. And this is just kind of saying again, let's slow it down. What do you see here, Leslie, that you wanted to touch on with this ending portion?
Yeah, so I've struggled with this verse because I've never been able to fully decide what it says, like what I actually hear. And I've searched for lyrics so many times, right? So there's what you just said, and then there's like a whole bunch of lyric sites out there that have a completely different interpretation of what the lyrics actually are in this verse. So I don't know. I'm just like that verse is a little bit enigmatic for me. There's one version out there that says something like, I'm smitten with that kiss you steal.
Oh my God.
Which it doesn't sound like that to me either. So I'm not like, that's another question I'd love to talk to Lisa about. Like, what the heck does it say? I don't know. This verse is just a little bit odd to me.
Yeah, because that's entirely different. Like that means an entirely different thing than what I just recited. Now, I'm not saying so I use a site called Moonbeam Levels for You. They tend to be pretty good, pretty accurate. When I've compared different lyric sites, I've noticed errors in some sites that this site does not have. So I tend to and I listen to them as well, and I tend to agree with what they're putting out there. And if the lines are what I just recited, I'll say we cannot kiss, not just yet. But then he says, or she says, and later in this little verse, let's find a room. I'm like, what? I mean, what are you going to do in that room?
Are you saying you don't want to kiss in public? Like, what's the
maybe. I don't know. It's so weird. But yeah, I didn't even bother to look at other interpretations of these lyrics.
And like the Rita Hayworth line, like that makes, like, it wouldn't surprise me that he had put that in lyrics. He had sort of a ongoing fascination with classic film and things like that. But there's some sites out there that say something like, instead of Rita Hayworth, it says, babe, I would never treat you like this. Like, babe, I would never, not.
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know. This verse, I was kind of not dreading talking about it, but like, I don't know what I'm going to say about that verse.
Yeah, well, nobody seems to know exactly what's being said.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to talk about a verse where the lyrics are so different, but depending on which site you go to.
Lisa, if you ever listen to this, let us know.
Yeah, because I went to Genius, which is another usually pretty solid one, but I've noticed some errors in Genius. I'm suffering and kiss, not just yet.
That's a third version.
Yeah, so I really just need to put it out there to the listeners. Like, what have you heard here? Like, I know that this song is not a song that people have been listening to. Well, most of us have not been listening to for decades and decades, like songs off of Purple Rain or 1999. So maybe there hasn't been a widespread Prince fandom interpretation of these lyrics, because it's for the most of our lives it's been a vault track. But if you have heard this song enough where you've come up with your own interpretations of what's being said here, and it differs from any of the things that we've already cited, let me know, because there's nothing out there that's proving that this is any of these sites are right or wrong. So we're just running with it.
I think we can agree that it says, let's find a room. Do you want me? I want you. Right?
Yeah, that part
that's unambiguous.
Let's find a room. So again, is it because you just don't want to exhibit PDA, or is it more like we want to do this? We want to be together physically. Let's go find a place to do it. Apparently not my house or your house. Well, this person just arrived in town and just has $5 or $10, so they probably don't have a place. So hopefully the singer of this song will spring for the room that they're suggesting they get, because I don't think the person that arrived in town has enough to really buy much, or shouldn't be spending it on a room at least.
True.
Okay, so then that is where the song segues into Roadhouse Garden. And the music changes, of course, because it's two separate songs, but it flows very nicely. I think it sounds good together. They do a great job of combining the songs, mixing it in a way that just makes it sound like any medley that was originally intended to be together. And again, we don't know if Prince had plans to combine these two songs in his mind, and that's why he performed them that way on June 7th, 1984, or if when they were practicing for this show, they're just like, oh, I got an idea. Why don't we do a medley of these two unreleased songs? Okay, cool. Let's do it. And then that just became canon because that's all we ever got. I'm not sure, but it sounds good together to me. How about you? Do you like how the two songs blend together here at this moment?
I do. Like I said before, I think that the mood fits. It's not like there's a jarring mood change between the two, and even if the lyrics don't have really a common thread otherwise, I think they sound good together. He clearly thought so as he arranged them live that way. But I still would like separate versions at some point.
Yeah, me too. So Prince is back in the lead vocal position for Roadhouse Garden. And he starts the song with, "This is the road that leads to where I live. See the house, open the door, it's all right." Then he says, "This is the house where we used to play. We're open nights, we're open days, it's all right. This is the garden where emotions grow. 24 feelings all in a row, it's all right. Yeah, it's all right." So he does kind of 3 verses before getting to the very brief chorus of, "I'm talking about the Roadhouse Garden, the Roadhouse Garden." So, right, the thing that jumps out to me is the way he starts each of these verses. This is the road, this is the house, this is the garden. And that's where we get Roadhouse Garden from. But besides the obvious connection to the title of the song and how he structures the verses here, what are you getting from, like, as an overall theme for this song based off of those first 3 verses, Leslie?
Well, knowing that conventional wisdom / what folks who were there have said was that this tune was kind of introduced as like a housewarming for the Flying Cloud Drive warehouse,
which is where it allegedly was recorded.
Right, like
studio
sort
version.
of. Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, everybody come here, and then he rolls out the song. That's sort of how I hear it, right? Like, so, a roadhouse, having seen the film Roadhouse as a kid, that's really my only frame of reference for it. But,
shout out to Patrick
kind of
Swayze.
like yeah, R.I.P. Being sort of a rough place that folks get together sort of on the outskirts of town, where there's music and other things. That I hear that, like, his intention for perhaps what was going to be at the Flying Cloud warehouse. And then, like, garden being, like, I don't know, more of a happier, I don't know how to put it, more organic and colorful place. Sort of putting those two things together, I think, is what I've always heard is him trying to say, like, this is my vision for this space, and I want you to be here. See the house, open the door, it's all right. Come on in. You're welcome here. I could be reading way too much into it, but that's the way I've always heard it.
So I see what you're saying. So, like, it's a physical place, clearly, because it's a house and there's a road that leads to it. And so when I think of what you just described, I'm thinking of it being a physical place, but also a mental state, or a place where you can feel at ease with he says where emotions grow. And he's using garden as that metaphor for a place where you can be emotionally well You can feel free to exhibit your emotions, be who you are in this roadhouse. So I get it. It's kind of, I mean, what it really kind of reminds me of is Paisley Park, the song, and which again makes sense because these were around the same time, both written in '84, as far as we know, and the concepts seem vaguely similar, I guess. So, like in Paisley Park, there's a park that is known for the face it attracts. Here he says, this is a road, this is a house, this is a garden. So he's kind of like presenting this idea of a place in both songs. He uses some similar language later in the song when we get to the lyrics, using the word color. Color is a word that he will use. In Paisley Park, he doesn't really talk much about emotions, at least not using that actual word, although the song is, I think, speaks quite a bit about people's being able to set aside emotional trauma or deal with it in some way at Paisley Park. He doesn't quite get so deep into it in the lyrics of Roadhouse Garden. So, like, if people are comparing Roadhouse Garden and Paisley Park as songs, I think Paisley Park is a better written song lyrically. There's more to it. But in some ways, I think there are similarities here as well between those two. I kind of get a Paisley Park vibe out of it.
Definitely, like his clear longing and planning for a playground to create, with the people that he loves and or respects. And then, the part, we're open nights, we're open days, like they recorded 24/7 pretty much. Like that's part of, sort of piecing together the clues that always makes me think like he was, of course this is metaphorical, but I think symbolically he was opening the door to Flying Cloud with this track.
Yeah, it's like Flying Cloud Warehouse was like the beta version of Paisley Park.
Right.
Like the first attempt at creating a space like that. I like that. The song, to me, definitely has like a musical theater feel to the lyrics. So it's like setting the stage, no pun intended, for a story that's going to be told. If you think of it as like the first song that you hear, like if there was the Roadhouse Garden musical that Jill Jones has spoken about, then this would be like potentially the first song you hear.
Right. It'd be definitely the opening number. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to get to know this place better as the play goes on. So the lyrics to this song don't have to be all encompassing. It just needs to kind of present this idea, and you'll get more out of it as the play progresses, as the musical progresses. Each song will give you more and more details around what Roadhouse Garden is. But just starting it off, like, here it is, everyone. This is the Roadhouse Garden, and we're gonna tell you all about it as the musical goes on. So it's really just an introduction. That's why I grouped those three verses together, because individually they don't really say much. It's just more about when you combine them, what are they trying to give the listener?
On the This is a Garden Where Emotions Grow, 24 feelings all in a row. I always hear that as a 24-track recorder. Or console.
Yeah.
There
had to be some sort of significance to 24, right? Besides hours, there's 24 hours in a day, 24-track recorder. I like that, yeah.
Just sort of, I don't know. That's just how I've always heard it.
And 24 is not divisible by 7.
No, not evenly.
Not evenly. So a rare instance was Prince uses a number that doesn't have really anything to do with 7 in some way. Okay, so the second grouping of lyrics, again, I'll read them all because, again, I think each of the individual verses don't say a lot, but when you combine them, I think they're trying to say more. This is the place where evil died. See the door, come inside. It's all right. This is the house where life's the play. Don't let the color scare you away. It's all right. This is the garden where emotions grow. Give 'em love. Open your soul. It's all right. Yeah, it's all right. Okay, so here, I don't know, like it just seems to be to me just continuing on with talking about what the Roadhouse Garden is or has the potential to be. The line "Don't let the color scare you away." So that one's interesting to me, and that because I don't know if it means how colorful it is, meaning like people are colorful, like they could be colorful personalities. They could be speaking about race. I don't know. Don't let the color scare you away. It could just be like music as color to it. I don't know. What do you think about that line?
It's interesting. I sort of heard it like you did, almost like a symbolic, or I don't know. But reading, I was mentioning Dwayne Tootle earlier. Love Dwayne. His interpretation in Prince and the Purple Rain area studio sessions is like the literal color of the building. Like going back to Flying Cloud, I guess it was brown. Like I don't know that I've ever seen a picture of it, or if I have, I've forgotten. But like, don't let this brown exterior scare you off. Right?
I love it's always the simplest explanation, right?
Yeah,
I mean, not
it
that
could
this
be,
is a slam dunk, but it could be.
Yeah,
I'm
I
trying
don't
to
know.
apply all this meaning to it. It's just like Prince thought that it looked like a bland place, and don't let the color scare you away. It's pretty cool once you get inside.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe, as we've seen so many times in Prince lyrics, maybe it was both.
Yeah.
He was great about multiple meanings and things like that. But I remember the first time I read this book, I was like, oh, okay, all right, that's.
You could literally just be talking about the color of the building.
Yeah. Might not be that deep, but it might be.
It might not be that deep. And that's like the theme of my show, is it might not be that deep. This is the place where evil died. That's a pretty interesting statement to make about a potential music studio.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's really like applying quite a bit of depth to this location. Evil dies here. I just recently watched these Halloween reboot movies, and one of the catchphrases of those movies is "Evil dies tonight." This is a place where evil died. So maybe meaning more like spirituality is welcome here. They say check your ego at the door. Here it's check your negativity at the door potentially. I don't know.
It's this is coming after Purple Rain, or at least after recording and whatever, about to be touring, I think, if I'm thinking about the timeline correctly. And to me, at least the tracks that ended up in and on Purple Rain are darker, just in general, with the exception of like Baby I'm a Star and some like super happy ones, but just in general they feel darker. This one feels more almost toward that sort of 60s era, almost psychedelic Sgt. Pepper Pet Sounds Around a World in a Day feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's leaning into that, and there's all this garden and spirituality and positivity. It feels like it's leaning more into that mood and era than Purple Rain.
I agree, and this is total non sequitur, but I think not a lot, but quite a few of the tracks that ended up on the Purple Rain Deluxe, while written and recorded in '84, so you would think that would fit in with the era, but not really, because Prince had Purple Rain done. Like,
he was over it.
He was totally over it. He was totally over, like you said, the darkness that had to go along with it, because it's kind of it's a musical drama, so there has to be dark songs about dark moments, in whether it's emotional and physical abuse, domestic violence, issues within family and within the band. It's just there's a lot going on in Purple Rain that lends to a darker theme. Most of those songs were written in '83, a couple of them in early '84, just to flesh out the film and get some music out on the soundtrack that was needed after the fact, after it was done filming. But, by mid '84, even probably spring of '84, the concept of Purple Rain was over in Prince's mind, I have to believe, and that's why Around the World in a Day was such a drastically different sounding record. So a song like Roadhouse Garden and Our Destiny and some of these other songs, Dance Electric, and I'm sure there's others that were on this Purple Rain Deluxe edition, to me more likely would have fit if there was ever to be an Around the World in a Day, because they're more thematically, and you cited this already, they're more thematically aligned with that release than Purple Rain. All this has in common is this was written around the time Purple Rain was going to get released. But right. We all know how quickly Prince worked. We all know how quickly he would pivot from one idea to the next. So this idea has nothing to do with Purple Rain, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Nope. I agree. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of call attention to it. It seems like a transitional track, right? Like it's another signpost that we're moving on.
For sure, moving on. This is the gardens where emotions grow. Give them love, open your soul. Yeah, that's a very 60s kind of love movement. Love can conquer the world. All you need is love. That's kind of the theme and the vibe that you get as a listener when you're hearing songs like and lyrics like this, in my mind.
Definitely.
Anything else about Roadhouse Garden, Leslie?
No, I just wanted to mention not about the lyrics, but how amazing it was when The Revolution was on tour pre-pandemic. Getting to see them perform this was amazing. So if any of them ever listen to this, just wanted to thank them for that experience. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that I'm sure it was. I'm not jealous. I'm happy for you. I will not say I'm jealous, because jealousy is a negative emotion. But I just, that would have been cool to be at. So I'm very happy that you got to experience that. How awesome would that be?
I was definitely cheesing a lot during that song. It was great.
For sure. I would have been too. Okay, so that basically brings us to the end of our discussion on Our Destiny / Roadhouse Garden. Two interesting and unique songs separately, brought together thanks to studio magic and the idea that Prince and the Revolution had placed in all of our minds, because they were performed once and only once together. And they will always be linked for that reason, no matter how many times we may hear them separately in the future. They'll always be linked in my mind. Any final thoughts on the song besides what you've already, or the songs combined besides what you've already told us, Leslie?
Just wanted to say again, Lisa or Jill, if you can tell us what Our Destiny actually says, please do.
Yes. That is the message of this episode, is we need to know what those last lines of that song are, or in the very first lines of that last verse, because nobody seems to know. All the lyric transcribes sites are in competition with each other for somebody's wrong, right? And maybe all of them are wrong, and that would be that would be almost comical if that was true. Okay, well, thank you so much again for being on the show, Leslie.
Sure.
Do you want to point anybody to any social media handles that you have out there?
I can. I'm not super active on social media right now, but if anybody just wants to chat on Instagram, I'm Leslie_3121, and on Twitter, I'm Shakadelica78. I think I'm kind of invisible on Facebook. I'm really hard to find, but at any rate, or email Leslie@leslieballard.com. Happy to nerd out about Prince stuff anytime. And thanks, Jason, for having me again.
You're welcome. This has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. The show can be found on social media, although, like Leslie, I've been ignoring my social media accounts lately. It can be a slog to try to, to sort through them. But if you want to say hello, if you want to be on the show, you can DM me on any of them: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Just contact me and let me know if you have any interest in being on the show on any one of those social media handles. I appreciate all the listeners, and thank you very much. And until next time, goodbye.